I'll record it to this computer. Well, hi everyone. This evening we're going to be in conversation with David Brittain. David has been a humanist since 2005, and he's variously founded Bedfordshire Humanists, Basingstoke Humanists. He's been involved with the armed forces as a armed forces chaplain. He's the chair of the South Central England Humanist Network and the super editor of Humanistly Speaking. So a very interesting guy. He's very dedicated to humanism. And welcome, David, for the conversation tonight.
Thank you very much for asking me.
Brilliant. So to kick things off, David, it would be good if you could just describe a little bit of your background, where you're from, your career, and what led you to humanism in 2005.
Well, what started me off in my career is pretty boring stuff. It's I left school without any qualifications. Unlike most of the people here, I didn't have any university degree or anything. I just started in a basic job and climbed the ladder into management, basically, working in the post office. So I left. I retired early and joined the armed forces later as the head of training in an RAF station, and so I developed a link with the armed forces, and I think a kind of sympathy with the armed forces. And I retired from that when I was 58, and the rest is essentially humanism. But my move to being a humanist actually goes back many, many years. I mean, I don't know about the rest of the people here that are listening, but I went through a time in my life when I was kind of searching for God. I mean, we were told at school every day that we were, we should be religious, and that God was up there looking out for us and making judgments on us. It so happened that my first girlfriend was quite religious, and so I decided to seek religion myself. I was 13, and I remember going into a church. I didn't know the difference between a Catholic church or any other Christian church. I went into this church on Sunday, and this was the Catholic church, and I didn't understand the chanting, and this ball that they had full of smoke that they wafted around. I thought that was really bizarre, and the transubstantiation thing struck me as really weird. You know, this is the body of Christ, this is the blood of Christ. No, it isn't. It's wine. It's crisp. So I became quite skeptical about religion, and by the time I was about 15, and when you're that age, the girlfriend of 2 years ago is a long, long time ago, I decided that I was an atheist. I didn't believe in God at all. But there's a big jump in my mind towards being an atheist and being a humanist. And I didn't know anything about humanism. I'd never heard of it. At the time, I felt very isolated. I thought I was the only person who didn't believe in God or the Christian God in the world. I felt very alone. And I remember railing against Cliff Richard, who I thought felt entitled to use his position as a pop star to promote his own religion. That really used to annoy me.
So it wasn't his singing?
Oh, no, actually, I found him quite entertaining in a very light sort of way, but I have to admit that. But yeah, I didn't like his perception that he could start telling other people about his own faith. And to be frank, I developed into an angry atheist. And there's lots of them about. I objected to the BBC's radio's constant promotion of religion through Thought for the Day. And that was me. I argued with anyone that I thought was religious. I even invited Jehovah's Witnesses through my front door to discuss it with them and to argue with them. One day, when I was whinging on about Thought for the Day, my son suggested that I consider humanism. And I thought, well, what the hell's humanism? I'd never heard of it before. And I should point out here that I was 57 years old at that time. And I looked up the Humanist UK website, or at the time it was the BHA, and I thought, wow, this is me. This is where I've been all my life. You know, this is exactly where I am.
Mm.
And humanism changed my life and changed me completely because, well, I know that one of the questions you want to ask, Anthony, is about what humanism means
Yeah, you personally. Yeah.
to me personally, and to me, it means, first of all, freedom of thought. The idea that I could be a good person without guidance from above, and that I wasn't a bad person for not believing, and that I did not deserve eternal damnation. As one gentleman said to me, I'll burn in hell forever and ever, simply because I didn't believe in a deity. I didn't see any evidence for it. Also, organised religion through Humanist UK gave me a voice. It gave me connection with other people who felt the same, a place where I could belong. That's really what I mean. It's a cave, it's a place where I could be. It meant that I could be part of that worthy pursuit that we should all have in contributing to make this a better world. It's not the exclusive prerogative of faith or religion. So when I became a part of humanism, I found a place where I could reside, where I could develop my own set of values. And actually, after then, the angry atheist in me gradually disappeared.
Yeah.
So,
Yes, it's interesting that you say it's the belonging because you know, Jeremy Rodel on the dialogue course, he covers that religions. What they do is they provide people with the three B's: belonging, belief, and behavior.
yeah.
So for you, it was really the belonging aspect, but how about the belief and the behavior aspect? Is there
The
any?
belief and behavior aspect was what humanism, that the belonging was obviously the first thing that I got, but the behavior, the moral values, the sense of where we are as ethical human beings, that really came from humanism, and it actually came from other humanists. I was like I don't know, I suppose an empty vessel. I was strongly influenced by other people that I met along the road as humanists. And I have to say here, I really must say, and I know this is going to sound trite, but humanists are some of the best people I've ever met. Some of the most thoughtful, interesting, and fascinating people I've ever met. And I think part of that comes from their open-mindedness they shared with me.
Yeah.
I was very privileged.
Yeah. Any particular individuals that had the most?
Well, there are so many. There's one lady in Bedford Humanists. I ended up doing her funeral, who was a remarkable woman who had a big influence on me. Yeah, it's hard to actually point any individuals. There are just certain people that I came across as a humanist that had an influence on me. It's hard to say.
Yeah.
It was a gradual absorption, I think.
Because looking at the fact that everywhere you've gone now, you've been founding things and creating things. So that energy, was that something you got from humanism, or have you always had that energy?
No,
Whatever you do.
I think I've got a lot of it from humanism. What inspires me is ideas. Anyone who knows me knows that I get easily carried away with ideas. Sometimes they're not terribly practical, and sometimes they are, and sometimes I strike gold. So,
Yeah.
uh, yeah, I'm just naturally inspired by new approaches to things, and that's what I applied really to humanism, and that will come out later.
Yeah.
Some of your other questions.
So what drove you in setting up Bedford Humanists then? What was the initial driver for that?
When I joined, I used to be all right. I used to be a member of the Labour Party. I'm not going party political here, but I used to be a member. And once I joined the Labour Party, there was a group for me to go to. There was a regular sort of meeting point, and people I could get to know and people I could share ideas and thoughts with. But that didn't happen with humanism. I made my application, and I ended up getting in touch with a lady named Gemma Hooper, who some of you will know and some of you won't, I guess, who in Humanist UK headquarters, and said, well, where's my local group? And she said, well, the nearest one is in, I think she said Watford, which was a long way away from where I used to live.
Yeah.
And I said, well, isn't there one in Bedford? She said, no, but you can start up one if you like. And that's how it happened. I was really, you know, it comes back to the physical contact when I think about it, from what you said, Anthony, that I needed that face-to-face contact with people. And so I was quite happy to set up, filled with evangelical zeal, I might add, a group in Bedford. And that's really how it happened.
Yeah, and then eventually you got involved with the celebrant training. So how did that happen? Was that a logical extension of Bedford, or was that something completely different?
Well, Bedford was very, very successful at the start. It started with 3 of us who sort of got together, and I think in the end we had about 50 or 60 sort of members. But one thing it lacked was a celebrant. And in fact, I'm going back to, 15 years ago now. And in the Bedford area, there was a difference. There was a gap between celebrants who and local groups, because I think celebrants felt that they didn't want to be involved with those people because we're protesters, we're political activists and all that sort of stuff. Whereas the, I suppose celebrants were close to being a priesthood, a kind of equivalent to a priesthood. And I think they thought themselves as detached and apart. It was something that I railed against. So we didn't have any celebrants in our group. I might add that I think that attitude has changed dramatically now. It's very, very different now.
Yeah.
And so because Bedford didn't have its own celebrant, and because nobody else volunteered, I decided to go ahead and take the training as a celebrant, which is a risk, because at the time it was a lot of money, still a lot of money to take the training.
And a lot of effort as well.
Yeah, it was. But that was another amazing time for me, because when you make the application, there's a quick test. You're tested on your humanist values, you're interviewed. And when you're accepted, or I was accepted, we were taken to a hotel in London where there was about 24 other trainees, with about 6 or 7 instructors. And we were asked to introduce ourselves. And one at a time, we stood up and said who we were and what we're about. And I was astonished at the quality of the people that I was rubbing shoulders with. I mean, there were retired head teachers, there were academics, scientists, and a lot of resting actors, I remember. In fact, all of us were given a mentor during the course. And my mentor was an actress who I actually saw on television. I was desperately excited when I saw her. So being celebrancy definitely attracts a particular kind of person. And the course was intense. At the end, we were expected to come up with a ceremony, because all celebrants courses are essentially based on funerals. The weddings and the namings are extensions of that. And at the end of our course, when we passed, those of us that passed, I remember it was very intense. We got to know each other very well. And the lady who ran the course said, now, at the end of this, you're all brothers and sisters. You're all brother and sister celebrants. And what I'm going to ask you to do is to hug everybody else and tell them you love them because they're brothers and sisters. And I thought, well, I didn't mind hugging the women. That was quite nice. But when it came to hugging the blokes, it was very awkward. It was really funny because we all expected to say, how much we love each other. And our voices went down about 3 octaves, and it was a kind of very fleeting sort of, oh, yeah, I love you too. And that was it,
So that sounds like the sort of thing they do in an acting course. Or
Oh, is it? I didn't know
drama.
that.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was overall it was fun,
Mm.
and it opened my eyes. The kind of people I was working with are exceptional people.
Yeah, so then afterwards you started officiating at humanist funerals and weddings and things, did you?
I started with funerals,
Yeah.
and I announced what you're supposed to do is to announce yourself to the local funeral directors and say,
Yeah.
"Hi, here I am. Fly me. I'm a humanist." Um, and I learned a lot with the through the funeral directors.
Yeah.
I learned that the funeral directors themselves genuinely do care very much about what they do, and that and the quality of the ceremony they help to provide.
Yeah.
Um, so that was quite an eye opener. But I tell you, the best about being a celebrant is getting to know the people that you're cremating.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that sounds weird,
Mm.
but when you hear some of these life stories, they are mind blowing, absolutely mind blowing, and a wonderful privilege for me. And I've always felt that about when you do a ceremony, certainly for someone who's died.
Yeah.
It's an amazing privilege that you're being granted by the family,
Yeah.
who actually invariably take you into their wing because you've got to ask them quite intimate and personal questions about them.
Yeah, well, when I tell people that I'm a humanist, usually the response you get is that they were really impressed with the humanist funerals that they've attended recently with for family members or anything. So I think it shows up humanism to its best.
Well, it's easy for us. It's
Yeah,
easy for us because
it's about
we're not fettered by the rules and regulations. We can just focus on the person that we're doing the ceremony for,
yeah,
and we're free to reflect on that person as an individual, as a personality, and of their unique experiences.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
and on one occasion, I must say, I mean, sometimes the vicars and the priests that you see resented you because they were confined to the standard ashes to ashes, dust to dust, and all that kind of stuff. But every now and again, you'd come across a vicar who really respected and admired what you did. I never forget. I was in Hitchin on one occasion at a crematorium there, and I was in the vestry, and a Church of England vicar came in, and he said, I heard your ceremony on the tannoy as you were giving it." He said, I thought that was wonderful. It's the most wonderful ceremony I've ever heard.
mm,
It was, well, congratulations." And he shook me warmly by the hand.
mm,
And I learned two things there. First, I had a bloody big head because I could hardly get out of that room after that. I was so proud of myself. But also, I learned that it was an important lesson to me that it's important to bear in mind that people who are on the religious side, who are, uh, who have this the faith that I don't share, they they're still they can still be warm and open-minded people. And I think I know maybe it sounds obvious now, but um, it's not a case of them and us. Some of the people in who wear the dog collar are very sincere and very warm people and honest people. And
yeah,
I think that was a lesson I learned.
yeah. They just come to different answers and
Yes, that's right.
yeah,
That's right. It's important to bear that. There are some who are right at the extreme end, and I agree. There's one vicar I met who I really didn't like, who told me that he was low on cash. He wanted to go on holiday. He's hoping there's going to be more dead people coming along for him to, that's the way he spoke to me.
yeah.
And but I mean, you get good and bad everywhere. I suppose that's the obvious lesson. Yeah.
And probably with humanists as well, just like any.
I haven't seen any bad humanists yet, but I'm sure there must be one or two.
Well, we'll see if we can get some bad questions for you. So just moving on, how did Defence Humanists happen then, and you becoming the first chaplain?
Well, I wasn't actually the first chaplain.
Ah,
The first chaplain was a chap. Well, the person before me was a chap named Dennis Cobell, who I believe is still working in southeast England, southeast London, by the way. as a celebrant, as far as I know he is. I've not actually met him. Yeah, I was, the British Humanists Association put out an advert to celebrants. Is there anyone who'd be interested in being a celebrant for the armed forces? Well, I put my name forward because of my connection with the armed forces at the RAF station at Henlow. And it turned out that I was one of 11 applicants, and they were gradually filtering people out. And eventually I got a telephone call when I was on holiday in Florence. Oh, I felt so important. I got a telephone call from the BHA while I was in Florence through the hotel. Are you still interested in being the Armed Forces chaplain? So I said, yes. I was down to the last two. And I said yes. And I was introduced to the Armed Forces as a chaplain. And the Armed Forces chaplaincy was in an awful state. They had 50 members. And just think of the size of the Armed Forces. They had 50 members. And when I tried to contact them, I found that about 15 of them were dead. And about 25 of them had actually left the Armed Forces and gone into civilian. So there was only about, there were 20, I think there were less than 20 members left that were part of the Armed Forces chaplaincy. And I realized that they didn't need a chaplain. What they needed was an organizer, a secretary. So I abolished the chaplaincy and became the secretary. And with that, I started producing magazines, a bit like Humanistically Speaking, with some godforsaken title. I think I started with The Godless Warrior, which caused a bit of a ruffle. But I changed that into something else and we carried on. And it increased our readership almost immediately. There was an immediate response. Then I started producing posters. And with the armed forces, you know, there's lots of places where you can put up posters advertising humanism. And so I designed these posters and sent them out, but they were deliberately a bit provocative, and they caused a bit of an upset among the senior officers within the armed forces. I mean, I remember one of them being soldiers, a picture of soldiers sort of fighting and with guns, and I put a comment there, like when the flak starts flying, do you go to the chaplain or do you rely on your mates? Do you look out for your mates? And I couldn't see what was offensive about that, but they really didn't like it. And when I was told, a Royal Navy commander who was a member told me that a vice admiral had taken objection to my posters, I immediately asked for the posters to be taken down. They were all over the world in the British Armed Forces. That led to quite a good working relationship with this vice admiral, who turned out to be the chaplain in charge of all three armed forces. And that led to a meeting in Portsmouth at his office with Andrew Copson and myself, where we started talking for the very first time about the possibility of some sort of humanist input into the armed forces, and that's lasted really until this day.
That's incredible, because obviously these men are sending other human beings to risk their lives, and
it's a pretty profound thing, isn't it? You know, and there are lots and lots of humanists within the armed forces. Interestingly, about 23% of the Navy, I remember, were humanists, were atheists and non-believers, and only 8% of the Army. Apparently, one of the reasons given was that when you sign on to be in the Army, if you put yourself down as an atheist or a humanist, the sergeant will take you to one side and say, well, look, you know, you don't want to be on guard duty at Christmas, do you? Or, being away from your family at Easter. So it would be in your interest to sign in yourself as a Christian. And that's why the figures apparently were so low.
Yeah. So the reason is religious privilege.
That's right. But I think I'm pretty sure that's changed now.
Yeah.
And in fact, I was talking, as you know, Anthony, I was talking to the president of the Armed Forces Association on Saturday, and he tells me that it's about a third of the armed forces now on all the services are now listing themselves as atheists, if not humanists, or non-believers.
Yeah. So the trend is a little bit behind the rest of society in terms of the 53% that humanists.
Yeah, I think in some cases there was downright prejudice. I remember going to a talk at the Tank Museum in Bovington, and there I came across some army people there, some army chaplains, who were really, I found them very unfriendly and very offhand with me. They didn't like me at all. They didn't like what I was. But I found with the Navy and the RAF, it was they're much more friendly, much warmer people.
Yeah.
So it's just different attitudes and different services. And if you've never been in the services, you may not know that each of the three main services have very, very different cultures.
Yeah, my dad was in the RAF, so and he didn't like the army at all. There was quite a lot of animosity there. But just a burning question I've got is, was it a paid role or was this all voluntary?
It was all voluntary.
Good grief.
All voluntary. I did that for about 3 years, and I was doing it on my own. I was pretty much exhausted at the end.
Yeah.
But I was very happy that we had, by the time I left, about 330 members. So towards the end, much of my time was just bringing in new members.
So after that, you decided to have a rest and head off to Basingstoke. So what happened there then?
It wasn't exactly a rest. I mean, I was still a celebrant at that time, and I was still involved with Bedford Humanists. Yeah, we moved to Basingstoke to be near the kids. When you reach a certain age, that's what you want to do, most of us anyway. And I found a similar situation with Basingstoke. There was no group here, so I found another group.
So just set one up, just like that.
Yeah. So actually, it's simpler than you think. You just get in touch with Humanist UK and say, "I want to set up a group. Can you send a message to the other humanists in the area?"
Brilliant.
That's what we did.
Did you see any differences between your experience of setting up Basingstoke and Bedfordshire? Because obviously Bedfordshire was before the internet, social media, whereas Basingstoke was after all of that.
No, we did have the internet in Bedfordshire.
Oh, you did?
No, the similarities were more than the differences. In Basingstoke, one interesting similarity between Bedford and Basingstoke was that both sides like to meet in pubs, and they like a lot of them sort of like their real ale. But I think I've thought a lot about this. There isn't really that much difference. I suppose they're all kind of white, middle-aged, middle-class, well-educated people, by and large. And we've got a long way to go to widen our appeal to people that are not in that category, particularly racially. And I think if you've got a group of Bedford people together and a group of Basingstoke people together, or indeed Reading or Windsor, I think they'd be very, very similar types of people who would get on very well and probably all agree with each other.
Yeah, biased towards the retired of us.
I think so. I think so. I think there are signs that younger people are getting in, but I think it's because, when you're retired, you've got more time. I think that must be it. You've got more time to do the things that you want to do. You're not committed to raising a family or earning cash. I remember talking to Andrew Copson once about the profile of humanists, and he said, "Well, if you look at a graph, you'll see that when they go to university, the profile is pretty high. Quite a large proportion of humanists
Mhm.
But when they sort of get married, they start having a family, they're concerned about their careers and looking after their kids, they drop out.
Mm.
And between, I think you said between about the age of about 23 and 45 or 40-ish, they're kind of out of the picture. And then when the kids have left home, they reflect on it again and think, oh yes, I'd like to go back and get involved in humanism. And I think that's quite an interesting graph. I think, well, to be honest, I think young people have other things on their mind.
Yeah.
You know.
And humanism, because it's not a religion, established religion, religions are do all the organizing for people. So there's very little sort of families working hard and having children need to do. It's all set up, whereas humanism, in some ways, it has to be a conscious, active decision to be a humanist.
I think that's right. I think one of the weaknesses that humanism has is it doesn't have a place. It doesn't have a physical place. If you're a kind of Christian, you've always got the church.
Yeah.
But with humanism, you don't have that. You can't just drop in. And in fact, I had suggested to Andrew that perhaps we needed to start doing that. We needed to start establishing locations that are kind of humanist buildings.
Yeah.
But obviously that's a massive undertaking. And but I was very happy that apparently other people had felt the same way. But I mean, what I had in mind was a kind of general training area, meeting place, administration point for Humanist UK, which would cost in the order of, in the countryside somewhere, which would cost in the order of about 25 to 30 million, which is way outside Humanist UK's finances. But Andrew Copson, I hope I'm not speaking out of school here, he said that Philip Pullman had a similar idea, and he offered to donate £100,000 to start off the crowdfunding. I'd offered 5,000 of my own money to do that. But I think Andrew had a struggle with his own board over that, because I think it's a dilemma, isn't it, between establishing yourself for the future and what you need to do now, and where you need to spend your resources in dealing with the government.
Yeah, the only place in the world I know that has got anything similar to physical churches is in Louisiana, where they've got ethical churches that look like churches, but that goes way back to 150 years ago. But that's the only place I've ever heard that has something like that.
Well, are these humanists?
Oh yeah.
Oh really?
I learned this at the World Humanist Congress in Oxford when it was there. There was a guy presenting. And he was actually the humanist pastor for the community there.
Oh, fascinating! You must tell me more about that.
Yeah. We can follow up some other time on that.
Yeah.
So just the last 10, 15 minutes. So moving on to Humanistly Speaking, and I don't know how to pronounce the acronym, but the South Central England Humanist Network. SCENE?
Nobody knows. Do you know what? I hate that title. I mean, everyone knows I hate it. I wanted it to be Wessex Humanists or something like that.
Yeah.
But Humanist UK were unhappy that it sounded too much like a group, they said. This is going to be a behind-the-scenes organisation. I don't, to be honest, I don't think that's the future of SCENE. I think after 2 years of experience, I think the future of SCENE is going to be more upfront. I think it has to be.
Yeah.
But anyway.
Yeah. So can you just tell us something about, what inspired you to be one of the leading lights and setting SCENE up?
Well, it was somebody else's idea, actually, but somebody who was actually complaining about Humanist UK. I don't think it was about, I think he felt that Humanist UK had too much control over what Humanists did. And he said he tried to get us together as a network organisation in order to constrain Humanist UK's influence. But it so happened that when we had the meeting and we had the gathering, that most groups, all of the groups actually, were very, very happy with their relationship with Humanist UK. And quite the reverse happened. And Skane was born as an organisation to help the local area, but also to work alongside Humanists UK. So what's the point of Skane? There are certain things that groups can do, but there are other things that are too big for them. And the idea evolved that with joint projects, we could do all kinds of things that individual groups couldn't. There was a lot of talk about campaigns, and that will evolve hopefully more after the coronavirus thing has passed. But also of equal importance was the idea of establishing new groups. And we were busy to establish new groups. As you know, Anthony, each group was asked to contribute £50 a year into the account. And that enabled us to launch groups like Portsmouth, Winchester, and help out at Reading. Yeah. But these have been kind of scotched because of the COVID thing. So that's been quite difficult for us. Yeah. But once the COVID thing has passed, we will carry on with doing that, with establishing new groups. Yeah.
So I detect
we're able to fund it and support it with expertise as well.
So I detect a theme here of where David's laying more eggs for local groups.
Laying eggs, yeah, I like that.
What do you think will be the impact of the pandemic on Skene and humanism nationally?
Well, it's very hard to think what the impact on Skane will be. I think Skane could pretty much go back to normal. I've been quite impressed, actually. Skane has been knocked sideways over the last year, and I was concerned that groups would lose interest, that they would think, oh, well, Skane was a thing of the past, after a year's break of no activity, effectively. But it seems that the opposite's true. There's still enthusiasm for Skane. Obviously, the network has done something for the individual groups. So I'm gathering the groups together towards the end of April. I set a date for a meeting to re-establish Skane, and I'm very confident now that Skane is going to go back to what it was meant to do, which was advise and support smaller groups, to provide expertise for other groups, and to establish new groups where there was justification for it. And I think that's going to happen. I think Skane's future is very bright, although I do hope that one day we change the name.
Yeah, a better acronym. And in fact, the fact we're having this conversation, this is a Skane event, in effect.
It is, really.
WIndsor Humanists by coming along and talking to us today. So,
yeah, humanistically speaking, actually was born from Skane. I had the idea, remember, with my experience in the armed forces, this communication, this line of communication, this magazine was extraordinarily successful with the armed forces. So I had the idea that perhaps we should create a magazine which could be used primarily for Skane as a means of circulation, keeping in touch, all that kind of stuff, and developing ideas to carry on. And I got together with Aaron Darkwood and David Warden and Ronnie. It's 4 people to start with. I can't remember Ronnie's surname now offhand. And they seemed quite keen. And we launched Humanistically Speaking in January 2020. And to be honest, I've been really, really encouraged and amazed at the success of the magazine, because it's evolved. When you made your opening remarks, Anthony, about Humanistically Speaking being edgier and dealing with issues that perhaps Humanistic UK cannot directly address, I thought you hit the nail really on the head. for me, because although we're 100% in support of Humanist UK, absolutely 100%, there are issues that we can address, and you'll have seen them. If you've seen any of our magazines, you'll know that what those issues are. That Humanist UK cannot directly press on, but they're issues that humanists care about, and I think that was the secret of our success. I was astonished when we got people from Newcastle, you know, Coventry, Wales, and East Anglia, you know, to come back to us and ask to be placed on the circulation list. And now I let a little secret out that after my discussion with the Armed Forces President, I think we're very likely to include the Armed Forces membership into our list. So at the moment, our estimated readership is about 2,500, which is amazing, and it's still expanding.
Yeah, and during lockdown as well. Because what I like about it is obviously things by the very nature from Humanist UK have to be quite PR careful so that they don't undermine their campaigns and stuff. So as a result, things from Humanist UK tend to be quite dry, quite corporate. And what I liked about humanistly speaking was particularly the last couple of issues and the current one on working women, is that you can cover issues that you know would be very difficult for Humanist UK to deal with, but what I liked about it was you gave voice to people who had quite significant differences of opinion on issues, and I just found that so refreshing. So was that a deliberate thing?
No, it's something that evolved within the editorial team. I'm not going to name names, but there are members of the Conservative Party. There are out and out socialists. There are people of all colours in between. So we all have very, very different points of view. And so when you get a report, and it'll happen in the next issue as well, you'll find that there are some individual editors who will say things that maybe the other editors wouldn't necessarily go all the way with. Let's put it that way. But that's good. That's healthy, isn't it? I mean,
absolutely.
it gives people a chance to reflect and review. And humanistically speaking is there for everyone.
Yeah.
And I don't just mean humanists either. The ambition is that humanistically speaking would be readable and enjoyable to people who are not humanists at all or wouldn't regard themselves as humanists.
Yeah.
And when you think about that, you think, well, here we have a potential medium which can bring in potentially a lot more humanists.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? People who have not heard of us or who may not agree with us, they might look at the magazine and think, bloody hell, yeah, they're right. They're right. I feel that I'm one of them, you know?
Yeah, because it can be like a shop window to the diversity of humanist thought in the UK, that it isn't just the Humanist UK. And I have a lot of respect for Humanist UK. I think they have such a big impact for such a small professional organization. I mean, there's only 25 paid up members, and the impact they have nationally is just absolutely astounding.
25,000 paid up members.
Oh no, 25 actual paid waged.
I see. Sorry. Yeah.
I mean, they're quite a small little organization. For the impact they have, it's quite incredible.
Yeah.
I was really surprised at that. But the problem is, as a result, they have to be, because they're so good at the campaigning and the lobbying, they have to be, you know, they have to watch every word, every you know, every punctuation, every comma. But for humanistly speaking, I mean, I know with Windsor Humanists, you get 20 humanists in a room and you've got 20 different opinions about every single issue. And I think humanistly speaking gets that across very well.
Yeah, I think you've hit the nail on the head there. I think Humanist UK is tied. It has to be because of the nature of the organisation. But humanistically speaking goes all over the place.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we are all dedicated and loyal humanists, and it will always be a humanist magazine. But it asks questions. It asks questions that maybe humanists want to engage with, but Humanists UK is not able to engage with.
Yeah, and it'll pull in more people when people see that there is this diversity of opinion, that it isn't just the Humanist UK campaigns, that there is more to humanism than that. Not that the campaigns are really important, but there is more. There is this, like, the Humanist UK is sort of like the top of the pyramid, but humanistly speaking is speaking to the rest of us underneath. And yeah, I certainly look forward to every issue. So long may it continue. So just to wrap up, David, thank you. This has been absolutely wonderful. I hardly had to say a word, so it's been really easy to interview you.
I'll tell you, I talk too much.
So what next for your humanism?
Well, there are. You mean for humanism in general?
For you personally.
Oh, for me,
Yeah.
I'm quite happy working on humanistically speaking. I must say, and I don't want Aaron to be red-faced about this, and I don't want to blush, but I feel amazingly privileged to be working with people who are so talented and so clever. And I'd like to say Aaron does most of the designing of the magazine, and I think he does a superb job. I think he's absolutely found his mission there.
There's definitely a style there, a house style.
There's definitely a style there, and Aaron makes it very light, and I love that. But there are other people, and the people that you don't know about, people who are involved with the video recording. There's going to be a monthly video recording. The next one is going to be with Anthony Grayling. And that's exclusive to humanistically speaking. And there's another guy who is involved with setting up the website, a guy who's exceptionally talented. So I'm just surrounded by so many people who've got so many skills. I just want to carry on and grow the magazine. And if it reaches a level where we're reaching in the many thousands of readers, we might become self-sustaining. We might take on adverts or whatever. But at the moment, we're reliant on donations, and for that we need improved software and payment of general expenses and cash to help us support new humanist groups and money to produce humanistically speaking leaflets and posters. So if any of you people feel that you'd like to donate, please just call up the website. You'll find very willing way of donating, and you'll get our sincerest thanks.
Yeah, so it's clear with the direction and where your enthusiasms lie for the next year.
Yeah, it's all, believe me, on the inside it is very, very exciting. Yeah, very exciting.
You've certainly fired me up with the conversation we've had. I feel quite exhausted and energized all at the same time. So David, I'm sure you're quite exhausted after that because you did all the work. So what I'll do now is I'll unmute people. Are you okay? Just to, I think if we were meeting in person, we would now break for a natural break, cup of tea, a pint of beer, but obviously virtual, it's dead time if we do that. So I hope you don't mind if we can just go straight to questions, yeah?
No, not at all. This is water, by the way.
Okay. So I'll unmute everyone. How do I do that? Ask all to unmute. And then I think Aaron probably wants to go first, don't you, Aaron?
I was really just joking about the difficult questions, just to build the tension there. But I do think once we reach our 1,000 members, our 1,000 readers, maybe David could shave his beard off or something as a achievement thing. What do you think?
Maybe I could what, Aaron? Did you say?
Shave your facial hair off when we get 1,000.
Oh, I see. All right. I'll do that. I'll do that and let it grow again. You won't notice the difference. Actually, I wear the beard because I'm so damn good looking underneath it. Yeah, and
well, you're looking good for 47, I think.
How long have you had the beard, David?
Since I was 19.
Okay. So,
wow.
So I do shave it off every now and again out of simple curiosity because I've forgotten what I look like.
Yeah. I'm struggling to unmute people, so if people do have questions if they can unmute themselves. And so is there anyone else got any questions?
Yeah, well, it's not a question, it's a couple of observations, really. You started off by saying you even invited Jehovah's Witnesses in one day. I used to be a Jehovah's Witness, and that very rarely happened. When somebody invited us in, it was a real good day. But the other observation I had was that you were talking about taking funerals and how religious funerals are so restricted. And I took only, as a Jehovah's Witness, I only did one funeral, and it was horrendously restricted. You couldn't talk about the person for more than 2 or 3 moments, and then you had to stick to a script of what you could talk about, what you couldn't talk about. And I found it boring as a speaker, and also the family found it very, very boring as well, who weren't witnesses. And I've never been to a humanist funeral, but from what everybody says, how very, very personal they are. And I think when somebody has died, that's what you need. You need a really good personal touch, not some idiots who they've never met spouting some religious doctrine from a platform. About your beard, my older brother, he's 9 years older than me, has had a beard all his adult life, more or less. And one day when I was about 12, 13, he shaved it off, and I walked past him in the street as I didn't recognize him. And he went back and he grew a beard, and he's had one ever since.
Sorry, is that how I should call you? Your first name?
Ray.
Oh, Ray.
Yeah, it's just bad typing. It comes up as user Ray.
Oh, I see. Some of my favourite ceremonies have been ceremonies where I've had people laughing. I love to put humour. I know this sounds bizarre, but I used to love putting humour into funerals, and people. It gave me a kick when people were leaving, saying, you know, that was the funniest thing I've ever seen, or that's exactly how he was. He was a really funny guy, and it's surprising. It's very uplifting for me as well. And I know it sounds weird. I know, you know, funerals are very sad events, and I recognise that. But humour is so important, and it's a way of breaking, you know, people reaching their emotions and all the rest of it. You've never seen a humanist ceremony. I've never seen a Jehovah's Witnesses ceremony, so I'm not in a position to comment. But there is something I admire about Jehovah's Witnesses, and that is the fact that anyone who's got the balls to knock on my front door and want to tell me about what they feel, I think deserves some of my time. I know that most people probably haven't got the time for that. But more than once, I've invited Jehovah's Witnesses to come in and talk to me. Yeah. But never once have they ever come back. Yeah. But I love the fencing and the debate.
Yeah, your energy and enthusiasm probably scared them, David.
Oh, well, I had one Jehovah's Witness converted, became a humanist.
Yeah. It's funny you should say that about funerals, because WIndsor Humanists, one of our members, is a humanist celebrant, and she's retired now, but she used to say that she knows she's done a good job when people cry at funerals, cry at weddings and laugh at funerals.
That's a lovely phrase. I haven't heard that, but I think she's obviously got it right on the button.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, any more questions or observations for David?
Can I just make a comment?
Yes, Anne.
Well, thank you very much for letting me attend. But it was very interesting. But the thing that I found most interesting is that you show a lot of tolerance in your views of, you know, being a humanist. In actual fact, I was introduced to humanism via some monks that I know. Which I thought was rather good, because they're so open, they're so secure in what they're doing. And I think if we were all very secure in our beliefs, as you very obviously are, and it took you time to find it, which I think is part of our development, if only we could all be as secure and acknowledge each other as you acknowledge that vicar that you spoke to and everything, then it would be so much easier for us all to live together harmoniously, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I wasn't always like that, as I've confessed, but I think you've absolutely hit the nail on the head. It's reaching out to the humanity in everyone, yeah, I get quite emotional when I think about it. I think that everyone who is tolerant of other people, whatever their faith or belief, deserves some respect and deserves accommodation, you know, and some compassion. And also, what I've learned since becoming a humanist is the notion that I could be wrong. You know, they could be right. So it's important to be open-minded. Thank you for that.
Very true. Yes. Well, you've shown us that. You've taught us again. You've reminded us how we have to be in life, is open-minded, not only in religion, but in everything, isn't it? You know, I mean, this is the problem with suppose that, you know, all the young people are demanding their freedom of speech and everything, and yet they think that freedom of speech gives them the right to abuse the other person's opinion or to abuse personally, which of course isn't what the freedom of speech is about at all, is it? It's just to learn, like you're saying, to respect each other's opinions and how we all are.
And in the end, they're not free themselves.
Oh no, well, they've got huge complexes. That's why they're like they are, isn't it? Yeah, but that we'll go into the psychology. That's another thing, isn't it?
Yeah, okay.
But anyway, thank you for this for the session.
Yeah, thanks. And just Ray's got his hand up there. So Ray.
One of the interesting things is so many people don't realize they're humanists. You know, I've spoken about humanism to U3As and so on, and people have come up to me and said, you know, I'd never realized that that's what I am.
Isn't that a common song?
Yes.
Haven't we all heard this?
Yes.
You know.
So you know, one of the things that annoys me at times is the desire for humanism to become the equivalent of another religion. One of the great things about humanism is that it recognizes we're all individuals and different, but hopefully we have one thing in common. We are interested in maintaining and supporting mankind.
Yes, I think there's an important difference between humanism and most religions. Is that most?
No, sorry, there's a tremendous difference between humanism and religion.
Yes, I take it, but to me, yes, I agree with you. But a fundamental to me is that religions have already arrived. They've already decided what their ideas are. If I could even quote, is it Buddha who said, "It's not the arrival, it's the journey." And I think inevitably many religions become cast in stone. They're fixed in their attitudes and ideas. That's utterly alien to being a humanist.
Yeah,
because we're changing, we're developing, we're evolving all the time.
Religion is an exercise in command and control, whereas humanism is an exercise in individuality.
That's one way of putting it, certainly. Yeah.
And freedom.
Yes.
Freedom. Yeah. Freedom is so important. And as I say, probably the most important thing to me is to be associated with people like you.
Yeah.
That's a nice thing.
You know, I belong to Essex Humanists for years. I've only recently moved to Surrey. And one of the discussions we used to have is, how can we get more members? Well, there's no need for anybody to belong to a group at all if they're a humanist, as long as they're living cohesively with their fellow beings.
So long as we're allowed to live that way as humanists. I mean, one of the things that, you know, the right, you know, dignity in dying, if you're in insufferable pain, then you should have the right to do that, and nobody else should have the right, in my opinion, to stop you and leave you suffering.
Yeah, although
I agree.
Yeah, although Ray, I used to travel the world working in the oil and gas industry. I know, guilty. But what I used to actually be jealous of my fellow workers who were religious, because wherever they went in the world, they had a ready-made community. But as an atheist and a humanist, I didn't. So in some ways, I am a little bit jealous of those ready-made communities, the religious and the faithful.
You're denying what you are. As a humanist, every human being is an open opportunity for you.
Yeah, I hear what you say. Yeah.
But and Anthony, can I ask you, who founded Windsor Humanists?
Myself and Roger and a handful of others.
So you didn't find a community, but you built one.
Yeah. Although the pandemic, things have slid a little bit because we haven't been able to meet for nearly a year and a half. So
Leaders like you, they'll come back.
yeah, well, we hope, but we're going to have to rebuild once we're allowed to meet up again. But I miss our regular meeting ups, because I think meeting face to face is different. I mean, Zoom's great. It's been great during the pandemic, but I don't know about everyone else, but I'm really fed up with Zoom. Yeah, I'll be glad when we can actually meet in person.
If I could come back on that the moment that Ray was saying, in fact yourself, Anthony, about feeling isolated about where you're going. In Dorset, where we are, in Dorset Humanists, we had a visitor from Australia. She came over here on a 3-month mission of doing something or other. She was a water treatment expert in some way. And she came along to our group, and she just gelled, and she attended our meetings, our talks, our walks, our outdoor events. And she just stayed with us for the 3 months. And she said, I just slotted in. She said, it's just like I'd always been there. And she loved it coming here. So I think that's of value. To go wherever you go, find out where the local humanist group is, and attend something they're doing.
Brilliant. So David McKnight, you had a question.
Yes, for the other David. I was interested, David, in what you said about the celebrants and that things are getting better now. When I was at Berkshire Humanists, I tried to start a relationship with the celebrants, and for a while it went okay. When I offered to do free advertising on our website, they all got resentful. Because they didn't want to be controlled by anybody else. They saw it as an intrusion. And yet celebrants can do so much for popularizing it, and they are doing it. I hope that somehow Humanist UK can help to better that relation. I think it's because they see it as a business, and any instruction that comes down the line, and some of them do need instructions, they resent. So, I mean, I would like to meet the celebrant who's going to celebrate me before I
actually, as a celebrant, I have actually had that several times where people know they're going to die soon. They've asked me to do the ceremony for them. Yeah, I can't speak for all celebrants, but I think there's a disconnect. I think celebrants feel. I think in the past I have known celebrants who have seen themselves as being a breed apart from the groups, but I hasten to add that is changing, or rather, if it existed in Bedfordshire, it doesn't exist.
Celebrants to come to Reading. We've got one very good one who's been on Radio Berkshire and so on, and so we've started well. But
is this the guy from South Africa? The guy from Radio Berkshire?
No, I think this is a woman. This is a woman.
Yeah, because there's a celebrant who's at Reading. He was the one I had to embrace that when I was relating the story, because we both lowered our voices. Oh yeah, I love you too. But yeah.
I was just wondering if I could book you for 50 years' time, David, to do my funeral.
Yeah, by all means, Aaron. 50 years. 50 years.
Well, yeah, but people make it to about 101. That's about the kicking out time now these days. So I think we book you for them.
Well, if you don't mind a 125-year-old dealing with you, then that's fine.
I won't be there to argue.
Okay. I'm going to quickly sort of just have one more question, if there's another question, just to draw things to a close. Have we all exhausted the questions?
Are any of these without cameras got their hands up, do you know, or can you see?
I can see there's no one got their hands up, so
Okay.
yeah.
I was going to ask you a quick question, if you want a quick question, and that is to David again, to say, what price are you going to offer when you enter the stock market with your humanistic thinking?
Well, I don't know. Yes, I mean, there's Aaron. You can't wait.
It's going to grow. And you're going to become a media mogul, or no, you're not.
Yes, I certainly.
You are, but
I didn't exactly see myself as a Rupert Murdoch. In fact, I can't imagine anybody like Rupert Murdoch running anything to do with humanism. But I just want to take it as far as I can take it, really. Aaron has his own views.
You are going to grow, and many things happen when you grow, don't they? And I'm just trying to prepare you for, battling with Rupert Murdoch.
What would surprise me is the attention that we've been getting from people, and not just from people like the President of the Armed Forces Humanists, but from Humanist UK as well. And their reaction to us has been generally very, very positive. In fact, Teddy Prout, who's a senior person in Humanist UK, has actually made suggestions that we could, editorial suggestions. So they want to be involved, and frankly, I want to work alongside them. So
I've got a question actually on that, David, and just to, maybe it's the last question just to wrap up. And because this is still being recorded. I mean, are you willing to accept unsolicited articles and ideas from diaspora? Yeah.
Yes, I mean, we have the caveat that obviously the editors will decide what goes in and what doesn't, and we reserve the right to make minor changes. Although, just to fit, we never change what people are saying.
Mm-hmm.
We won't do that. But we might want to make small changes. But yes, anyone who makes a contribution, it will be very gratefully received, and because that's what it's there for. It's there for everyone. It's there for you.
I'm looking forward to the next edition already. So because I really enjoyed reading the.
Well, it's about democracy, and there's an interview with Anthony Grayling, which I think you'll find quite fascinating.
Okay, I'd just like to bring proceedings to an end. I'll just hit the stop record button.